time now. Here we are. Hello everyone. Welcome. This is Bryony Rose Smith live from the Forbidden Library. If you have not tried already, if you have not read on the Discord, we're going to test some redeems today. I don't know if they're actually working. I did attempt to test them myself before the stream, but it seemed they were rather difficult to test on their own. If you would like to help me test these redeems, you will need to go and get a certain Chrome extension. Yes. I'll put it in the chat for you right now. But hello, Void. Hello, Rare Candy Guy. Hello, Boris, and hello, Jabba Hop. Here is the Chrome extension if you are interested in helping me test. Please let me know if you press any of the redeem buttons and whether they work or not. Because they don't seem to be working for me, at least. You don't have a desktop yet, so you can't test it. Well, that is a shame. I can see that Lucas is already in, so we shall see. How do you even get points? You have to watch for a certain amount of time. That is how you get points. You get 25 points for every 5 minutes watched. You do. And most of the redeems you can use in those 25. So I've been rather generous for now, because we are very much in our testing stage. So yes. Anyway, I am Bryony Rose Smith. Well, I'm not. I'm New Luck, the witch Bryony from October who possessed her over Halloween. And we're now sharing the body until I have done my Halloweeny duties, which are playing Bioshock and reading Frankenstein. After that, I'll be taking something of a break. You're on Firefox and Opera. Fair enough, fair enough. Sit around in stream and probably donate if the video is monetized. No, you don't get any extra for donating. It is simply sitting around and watching, you know, the thing you would normally do, except now you have buttons to press that do things. Which is wonderful. Like, Lucas, you should have 20 points already. Yes, and I did not hear it, which is just a shame. Allow me to do some jiggery pokery. Edit. Yes, we might get a little bit distracted from the book because of this, I will not lie. I'm going to take the cost of Hey Listen down to 1, so that we can test that as much as physically possible. And I'm going to take off the cooldown, just temporarily. I see Rare Candy Guy's in too. Wonderful. But unfortunately, I'm going to do one test thing. I'm going to take this away. Message response. Try that again. The throwables, I haven't quite worked that out. I've literally only been working on this in the last, 20 minutes or so to half an hour. So I will have to update those as I go. Yes, so if we click Hey Listen now, then there should at least, I don't know why it's not working. How annoying. Would very much like it to work. But I will be getting things like that if I can figure it out. Hello, Luke. Hello, welcome. Yes, I could see you pressed it a couple times there, Lucas. I do apologize that it doesn't seem to be working. I think I have everything connected up as it should be. Oh, that's very interesting. Anyway, no, commands, and then the actions, and then we go, hey, listen. I would like to test the action. Let's try put that again then, shall we? Cool. Play sound. play the hey listen sound. Okay. Copy the ID. Save. I am good, Luke. I am attempting to figure out YouTube channel redeems, yes. But they are rather difficult to figure out, and they don't seem to be doing as what they should. How could I not have enough points to redeem it myself? It is my channel! But la-dee-da, it says I have unlimited points, but it lies to me, it does, it lies. Oh well, how annoying. There is not a built-in channel redeem on YouTube. I am attempting to use a plugin to do so. I will pin the plugin at the top. If you would like to help me test, it is in the pinned messages. But I really don't think it's working, which is a crying shame. Yes, thank you, Lucas, for attempting to help there. Let me try with the bonk sound. I'm going to take the bonk sound down to 1 as well. Try that one. For some reason, the hey listen sound doesn't seem to be working as well. I'll test it on Chrome. The extension seems to not like Microsoft Edge. That's a shame. I'm going to give myself a restart. No! How annoying. I love how it tells me I don't have any points, but I should have unlimited power and points. No, shut up. I don't know what the clip button does. Yes, I'll give that truffle a go next time, since this one seems to not be working. Okie dokie. I'm going to deactivate them then, since there's no point in having them there if they're not working. I do apologize, yes. Oh well, that was a fun experiment at the very least. Thank you all for bearing with me while I tested that out, and we'll go back to the stream now. Yes. Okie dokie. Oh wait, a hot second, I just realized something. My books until freedom is wrong. Let me go to this page. This one actually says it correctly. 1 minute. It should be 938. Let me go back to here. Books until freedom. 938. We're getting through them, we are. How wonderful. Righto, let's have a little recap, shall we? Okie dokie then. So, Mr. Victor has a lovely, loving family and a wonderful home, but he got into some strange sciences when he was younger, and then he went off to university, only to be laughed at by most of the professors there, as the strange sciences he got into have widely been thought of as fictional at this point, due to better sciences coming across. There was one professor, however, who did not ridicule him, and simply brought him gently into the bosom of modern science. After that, he became obsessed with the idea of bringing the dead back to life, and in a possessed fervour of creation, made his titular monster. However, it did not go as well. As soon as he came out of his haze, and he saw the monster rose, he realized he had done something grim. He was very afraid of the monster, and he ran away. And then he bumped into his old friend from home, who was like, "Dear God, man, what is going on with you?" And then Victor ended up very sick, and his friend looked after him. And then eventually, after all that, and Victor did his degree and all that good things, he went home, only to find that his youngest brother had been murdered. And he was convinced, because he saw a man that looked like his monster, that it was the doing of his monster, somehow getting revenge on his creation. Unfortunately, it seems like the actual culprit may have been a young woman called Justine, who was taken in by the family and murdered the child for a photo of his mother, whom Justine very much loved. However, Victor and his probably soon-to-be wife/cousin, Elizabeth, because, ye old times. One sec. Can you hear that? Yes, you can. You got some free fireworks again today, everyone. I suppose Bonfire Night was not that long ago. People have some fireworks to use up. Anyway, yes, it was Bonfire Night on the 5th, you see. And that is when England just sets off a lot of fireworks for funsies. And I suppose some people still have some left over. So if you hear any boom boom in the background, that would be some fireworks being set off. Please do not be alarmed. Anyway, they went to go visit Justine. Justine was like, I did not do it. And I don't know if I believe her personally, but it seems that Elizabeth and Victor do. However, Justine was found guilty and sentenced to death. So that is where we left off. And on the morrow, Justine died. Elizabeth's heart-rending eloquence failed to move the judges from their settled conviction in the criminality of the saintly sufferer. My passionate and indignant appeals were lost upon them, and when I received their cold answers and heard the harsh, unfeeling reasoning of these men, my purposed avowed avowal died away on my lips. Thus I might proclaim myself a madman, but not revoke the sentence passed upon my wretched victim. She perished on the scaffold as a murderess. From the tortures of my own heart, I turned to contemplate the deep and voiceless grief of Elizabeth. This was also my doing, and my father's woe, and the desolation of that late so smiling home, all was the work of my thrice accursed hands. Ye weep, unhappy ones, but these are not your last tears. Again shall you rise, the funeral wail, and the sound of your lamentation shall again and again be heard. Frankenstein, your son, your kinsman, your early much-loved friend, he who would spend each vile drop of blood for your sakes, who has no thought nor sense of joy, except as is mirrored also in your dear countenances, who would fill the air with blessings and spend his life in serving you, he bids you weep, to shed countless tears, happy beyond his hopes, if thus inexorable fate be satisfied, and if the destruction pours before the peace of the grave have succeeded to your sad torments. Yes, Victor is guilty, but his consequences have been avoided, that is for sure. How long can they be avoided for? Thus spoke my prophetic soul as, torn by remorse, horror, and despair, I beheld those I loved spend vain sorrows upon the graves of William and Justine, the first hapless victims to my unhallowed arts. Oh my gosh, I was like one page off a new chapter when I stopped last time. God damn it! Oh well. Chapter 9. Nothing is more painful than the human mind, to the human mind, than after the feeling have been worked up by a quick succession of events, the dead calmness of inaction, and certainty which follows and deprives the soul of both hope and fear. Why I like to work out long chapters before I start. Yes, that's probably a wise thing to do. Justine died. She rested, and I was alive. The blood flowed freely in my veins, but a weight of despair and remorse pressed on my heart which nothing could remove. Sleep fled from my eyes. I wandered like an evil spirit, for I had committed deeds of mischief beyond description horrible, and more, much more, I persuaded myself, was yet behind. Yet my heart overflowed with kindness and the love of virtue. I had begun life with benevolent intentions, and thirsted for the moment when I should put them in practice, and make myself useful to my fellow beings. And now all was blasted. Instead of that serenity of consciousness which allowed me to look back upon the past with self-satisfaction, and from thence to gather promise of new hopes, I was seized by remorse and the sense of guilt which hurried me away to a hell of intense tortures, such as no language can describe. This state of mind preyed upon my health, which had perhaps never entirely recovered from the first shock it had sustained. I shunned the face of man. All sound of joy or complacency was torture to me. Solitude was my only consolation. Deep, dark, death-like solitude. My father observed with pain the alteration perceptible in my disposition and habits, and endeavoured my arguments deduced from the feelings of his serene consciousness and guiltless life to inspire me with fortitude and awaken me the courage to dispel the dark cloud which brooded over me. "Do you think, Victor," said he, "that I do not suffer also? No one could love a child more than I loved your brother." Tears came to his eyes as he spoke. "But it is not a duty to the is it not a duty to the survivors that we should refrain from augmenting their unhappiness by an appearance of immoderate grief? It should also a duty owe to yourself, for excessive sorrow prevents improvement, or enjoyment, or even the discharge of daily usefulness, without which no man is fit for society." This advice, although good, was totally inapplicable to my case. I should have been the first to hide my grief and console my friends, if remorse had not mingled in its bitterness and terror, its alarm, with my other sensations. Now I could only answer my father with a look of despair, and endeavour to hide myself from his view. About this time we retired to our house in Bellerive. This change was particularly agreeable to me. The shutting of the gates regularly at 10 o'clock, and the impossibility of remaining on the lake after that hour, had rendered our residence. That's a very different word I came up with there. Had rendered our residence within the walls of Geneva very irksome to me. I was now free. Often, after the rest of the family had retired for the night, I took the boat and passed many hours upon the water. Sometimes, with my sails set, I was carried by the wind, and sometimes, after rowing into the middle of the lake, I left the boat to pursue its own course, and gave way to my own miserable reflections. What is it? No! Yes, I know, I am so cool, and so nice and funny. Yes, you're right, and wholesome, yes. And all the other wonderful things I'm going to say about him. Yes, wonderful, yes. Good writer, yes. And a great friend. La 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 la, wonderful things. Of course you do, I'm amazing. Of course you enjoy watching me. Of course you do, yes. Yes, it's all fine. I was often tempted when all the peace was around me, and the only unquiet thing that wandered restless in a scene so beautiful and heavenly. If I except some bat, or the frogs, whose harsh and uninterrupted croaking was heard only when I approached the shore, often, I say, I was tempted to plunge into the silent lake, that the waters might close over me, and my calamities forever. Oh, shut up, all of you. I am some random person on the internet. I just happen to talk to you. But I was restrained when I thought of the heroic and suffering Elizabeth, whom I tenderly loved, and whose existence was bound up in mine. I thought also of my father and my surviving brother. Should I, by my base desertion, leave them exposed and unprotected to the malice of the fiend who I had let loose among them? I'm not a tsundere. Barker. At these moments I wept bitterly, and wished that peace would revisit my mind, only that I might afford them consolation and happiness, but that could not be. Remorse extinguished every hope. I had been the author of unalterable evils, and I lived in daily fear lest the monster whom I had created should perpetrate some new wickedness. I had an obscure feeling that all was not over, and that he would still commit some signal crime, which, by his enormity, should almost efface the recollection of the past. There was always scope for fear, so long as anything I loved remained behind. My abhorrence of this fiend cannot be conceived. When I thought of him, I gnashed my teeth. My eyes became inflamed, and I ardently wished to extinguish that life which I had so thoughtlessly bestowed. When I reflected on his crimes and malice, my hatred and revenge burst all bounds of moderation. I would have made a pilgrimage to the highest peak of the Andes, could I. When there, I have precipitated him to their base. I wished to see him again, that I might wreak the most utmost extent of my abhorrence on his head, and avenge the deaths of William and Justine. Our house was the house of mourning. My father's health was deeply shaken by the horror of recent events. Elizabeth was sad and desponding. She no longer took delight in her ordinary occupations. All pleasure seemed to be her sacrilege towards the dead. Eternal woe and tears, she then thought, was just tribute she should pay to innocence so blasted and destroyed. She was no longer that happy creature who in earlier youth wandered with me on the banks of the lake and talked with ecstasy of our future prospects. The first of those sorrows which are sent to wean us from the earth had visited her, and its dimming influence wrenched her dearest smiles. "When I reflect, my dear cousin," said she, "on the miserable death of Justine Mortiz, I no longer see the world and its works as they before appeared to me. Before I looked upon the account of vice and injustice that I read in books, or heard from others, as tales of ancient days or imaginary evils. At least they were remote and more familiar to reason than to the imagination. But now misery has come home, and men appear to me as monsters thirsting for each other's blood. Yet I am certainly unjust. Everyone believed that poor girl to be guilty, and if she could have committed the crime for which she suffered, assuredly she would have been the most depraved of human creatures. For the sake of a few jewels, to have murdered the son of her benefactor and friend, a child whom she had nursed since its birth, and appeared to love as if it were her own. I could not consent to the death of any human being, but certainly I should have thought such a creature unfit to remain in the society of men. But she was innocent. I know. I feel she was innocent. You are of the same opinion, and that confirms me. Alas, Victor, when falsehood can look so like truth, who can assure themselves of certain happiness? I feel as if I were walking on the edge of a precipice, towards which thousands are crowding and endeavouring to plunge me into the abyss. William and Justine were assassinated, and the murderers escaped. He walks about the world free, and perhaps respected. But even if I were condemned to suffer on the scaffold for the same crimes, I would not change places with such a wretch." I listened to this discourse with extremest agony. I, not in deed, but in effect, was the true murderer. Elizabeth read my anguish in my countenance, and kindly taking my hand, said, "My dearest friend, you must calm yourself. These events have affected me, God knows how deeply, but I am not so wretched as you are. There is an expression of despair and sometimes of revenge in your countenance that makes me tremble. Dear Victor, banish these dark passions. Remember the friends around you, who centre all their hopes in you. Have we lost the power of rendering you happy? Ah, while we love, while we are true to each other, here in this land of peace and beauty, your native country, we may reap every tranquil blessing. What can disturb our peace?" And could not suffer such words from her, when I fondly prized before every other gift of fortune sufficed to chase away the fiend that lurked in my heart. Even as she spoke, I drew near to her as if in terror, lest at that very moment the destroyer had been near to rob me of her. Thus not the tenderness of friendship, nor the beauty of earth, nor of heaven, could redeem my soul from woe. The very accents of love were ineffectual. I was encompassed by a cloud which no beneficial influence could penetrate. The wound, dear, dragging its fainting limbs, to some untrodden brake, there to gaze upon the arrow which had pierced it, and to die was but a type of me. Sometimes I could cope with the sullen despair that overwhelmed me, but sometimes the whirlwind of passions of my soul drove me to seek, by bodily exercise, and by a change of place, some relief from my intolerable sensations. It was during an access of these kind I suddenly left my home, and bending my steps towards near the Alpine valleys, sought in the magnificence, the eternity of such scenes, to forget myself and my ephemeral, because human sorrows. Wanderings were directed towards the valley of Chamonix. I had visited it frequently during my boyhood. 6 years had passed since then. I was a wreck, but naught had changed in those savage and enduring scenes. I performed the first part of my journey on horseback. I afterwards hired a mule, as the more sure-footed and less liable to receive injury on the rugged roads. The weather was fine. It was about the middle of the month of August, nearly 2 months after the death of Justine, that miserable epoch from which I dated all my woe. The weight upon my spirit was sensibly lightened as I plunged yet deeper into the ravine of Arve. The immense mountains and precipices that hung over me on every side, the sound of the river raging among the rocks, and the dashing of the waterfalls around spoke of power mighty as omnipotence, and I ceased to fear or to bend before any beings less almighty than that which created and ruled the elements, here displayed in their most terrific guise. Still, as I ascended higher, the valley assumed a more magnificent and astonishing character. Ruined castles hanging on the precipices of piny mountains, the impetuous Arve, and cottages here and there peeping forth from among the trees, formed a scene of singular beauty. But it was augmented and rendered sublime by the mighty Alps, whose white and shining pyramids and domes towered above all, as belonging to another earth, the inhabitants of another race of beings. I passed the bridge of Pellissier, where the ravine from which the rivers formed opened before me, and I began to ascend the mountain that overhangs it. Soon after, I entered the valley of I've said this before, Chamonix. This valley is more wonderful and sublime, but not so beautiful and picturesque as that of Savox, through which I had just passed. The high and snowy mountains were its immediate boundaries, but I saw no more ruined castles or fertile fields. Immense glaciers approached the road. I heard the rumbling thunder of the falling avalanche, and marked the smoke of its passing. Mont Blanc, the supreme and magnificent Mont Blanc, raised itself from the surrounding Aiguilles, and its tremendous dome overlooked the valley. Yes, it does sound like quite a lovely hike, does it not? The imagery is wonderful. A tingling, long-lost sense of pleasure often came across me during this journey. Some turn in the road, some new object suddenly perceived and recognized, reminded me of days gone by, and were associated within the light-hearted gaiety of boyhood. The very winds whispered in soothing accents. The maternal nature bade me weep no more. Then again, the kindly influence ceased to act. I found myself fettered again to grief, and indulging in all the misery of reflection. Then I spurred my animal, striving to forget the world, my fears, and, more than all, myself. Or, in a more desperate fashion, I alighted and threw myself on the grass, weighted down by horror and despair. At length I arrived at the village of Chamonix. I'm just going to say it as Chamonix. I do apologize. If anyone actually knows the pronunciation, please feel free to tell me. Exhaustion succeeded to the extreme fatigue, both of body and of mind, which had endured. For a short space of time I remained at the window, watching the pallid lightnings that played above Mont Blanc, and listening to the rushing of the Arve, which pursued its noisy way beneath. The same lulling sounds acted as a lullaby to keep my too keen sensations. When I placed my head upon my pillow, sleep crept over me. I felt it as it came, and blessed the giver of oblivion. Chapter 10. I spent the following day roaming through the valley. I stood beside the sources of the Aveyron, which take their rise in a glacier that with slow pace is advancing down the summit of the hills to barricade the valley. Yes, I'm going to go to bed now and go ask the giver of oblivion to go nap. Yes, we're on the next chapter already. We're doing quite well today. You were also gifted by the giver of oblivion, it seems. The abrupt sides of the vast mountains were before me. The icy wall of the glacier overhung me. A few shattered pines were scattered around, and the solemn silence of this glorious presence chamber of imperial nature was broken only by the bawling waves or the fall of some vast fragment, the thunder sound of the avalanche, or the cracking reverberating along the mountains of the accumulated ice, which, through the silent working of immutable laws, was ever and anon rent and torn, as if it had been but a plaything in their hands. These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquillized it. In some degree, also, they diverted my mind from the thought over which it had brooded for the last month. I retired to rest at night. My slumbers, as it were, waited on and ministered to my semblance of grand shapes which I had contemplated during the day. They congregated round me, and unstained snowy mountain tops, the glittering pinnacle, the pine woods and ragged bare ravine, the eagles soaring amidst the clouds. They all gathered round me and bade me be at peace. Where they had fled when the next morning I awoke, all the soul-inspiringty fled with sleep, and dark melancholy clouded every thought. The rain was pouring in torrents, and thick mists hid the summits of the mountains. so that I even saw not the faces of those mighty friends. Still I would penetrate their misty veil, and seek them in their cloudy retreats. What were rain and storm to me? My mule was brought to the door, and I resolved to ascend to the summit of Montevert. I remembered the effect that the view of the tremendous and ever-moving glacier had produced upon my mind when I first saw it. It had then filled me with a sublime ecstasy that gave wings to the soul and allowed it to soar from the obscure world to light and joy. The sight of the awful and majestic in nature had indeed always the effect of solemnizing my mind and causing me to forget the passing cares of life. I determined to go without a guide, for I was well acquainted with the path, and the presence of another would destroy the solitary grandeur of the scene. You already say you weren't playing Bioshock 2, I forgot. I mean, I have no plans for it, that is for sure. I will simply be finishing Bioshock. The ascent is treacherous, but the path is cut into continual and short windings, which enable you to surmount the perpendicularity of the mountain. It is a scene terrifyingly desolate. In 1,000 spots, the traces... Oh, 1 second. I've been reading too much and not drinking enough. But yes, Luke, I have nearly finished Bioshock, actually. I believe I will only have one stream left of it, really. And even then, I'm not sure if it'll last the whole stream. I probably would have finished last stream if I didn't have to cancel it a bit earlier, unfortunately due to family issues. But it'll be interesting, I can't wait to see the ending again. I would kindly like to play it. Where's my mouse gone? Come back. Mouse, don't run out of Why do you have to run out of battery midstream all the time? Why are you like this? Ugh! Why has it always got to be like this, honestly? Come here, charger cable, come here. I would have it plugged in more often, but you see, there is no convenient place to plug it in, and keep it in the place that I actually like to use it, you know. So it has to be in kind of an awkward position when it's charging. It's very annoying. And I'm also not very good at remembering to put it on charge when I say go to lunch or something, and I leave my PC on sleeping. But anyway, that's not what you're here for. You're not here to hear me bellyache about my mouse. We're here to read some book. And also yawn, 1 second. Book. It is a terrifying scene, terrifyingly desolate. In 1,000 spots, the traces of the winter avalanche may be perceived, where trees lie broken and strewn on the ground, some entirely destroyed, others bent leaning upon the jutting rocks of the mountains or transversely upon other trees. The path, as you ascend higher, is intersected by ravines of snow, down which some stones continually roll from above. One of them is particularly dangerous, as the slightest sound, such as even speaking in a loud voice, produces a concussion of air sufficient to draw destruction upon the head of the speaker. The pines are not tall or luxuriant. They are sombre and add an air of severity to the scene. I looked on the valley beneath, Vast mists were rising upon the rivers, which ran through it and curling in thick wreaths around the opposite mountains. Those summits were hid in the uniform clouds, while the rain poured from the dark sky, and added to the melancholy impression I received from the objects around me. If Bioshock lasts an hour, do we get to hear your 2024 plans? Or have you not made up any do I have 2024 plans? What do you mean? I'm never leaving! Of course I'm staying forever! But I suppose that's something you would have to ask the other one. I mean, this is her channel, and I told her she could do all the other things, and we still have to renegotiate. But, yes, I wouldn't keep your hopes up for 2024, new luck. I will not. I will probably say that. I suspect that she doesn't want me around anymore. And hello, Zoe! Welcome! Welcome. I looked on the valley beneath vast. I don't know, I read that one. Alas, why does man boast of sensibilities superior to those apparent in the brute? It only renders them more necessary beings. If our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might be nearly free. But now we are moved by every wind that blows, and a chance word or scene that word may convey to us. Tell her if she does not let you be around sometimes, you will turn her into a toad or something. Oh, I should do that. That would be rather funny, wouldn't it? Ooh, we have a poem. We rest, a dream has power to poison sleep. We rise, a wandering through pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond woe, or cast our cares away. It is the same, for, be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure is free, still is free. Yet man's yesterday may nearer be his morrow, naught may endure but malleability. Why don't I see her in a mirror if she backstabs me? Well, that's rather difficult. I don't think I can do that. Because if she's backstabbed me, then have I not already lost? It was nearly noon when I arrived at the top of the ascent. For some time I sat upon the rock that overlooks the sea of ice. A mist covered both that and the surrounding mountains. Presently a breeze dissipated the clouds, and I descended upon the glacier. The surface is very uneven and— oh, here he goes again, complimenting me. Lovely. Thank you, Luke. I am cool. Yes, I am. The surface is very uneven, rising like the waves of a troubled sea, descending low and intercepted by rifts that sink deep. Backstab metaphorically, as in be a traitor. Kinda like I'm being right now. Yes, you are my dirty traitor, aren't you, Void? You like to pretend with your fan fiction that you're on her side, but no, you're mine, really, aren't you? Yes. My minion. I am cool and evil, am I not? Absolutely wonderful, yes. From the side where I now stood, Monivert was exactly opposite. At the distance of a league, and above it rose Mont Blanc, an awful majesty. I remained in a recess of the rock, gazing on this wonderful and stupendous scene. The sea, or rather the vast river of ice, wound among its dependent mountains, whose aerial summits hung over its recesses. Their icy and glittering perks shone in the sunlight over the clouds. My heart, which was before sorrowful, now swelled with something like joy. I exclaimed, "Wandering spirits, if indeed ye wander, and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion away from the joys of life." I suddenly beheld, as I said this, the figure of a man. Yeah, if she gets rid of you permanently, as the Briny fan, I'm going to be kinda upset for a while. Like 4 to 5 months, give or take. Wow, you'll get over me that fast? How sad. You should be miserable for all eternity if I ever left permanently, obviously. At some distance, advancing towards me with superhuman speed, he bounded over crevices in the ice, among which I had walked with caution. His stature also, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of man. I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness seize me. 1 second. And we're back. Maybe a couple of years. My last words would be New Luck was the best. Yes, I am. Maybe a couple of years, depending if I really like your final streams or not. Yes. Well, of course, how can you not like my streams? My existence should be enough for you to like me. I shouldn't have to prove myself to you. I am perfect! Don't you know? Perfection. I am the best, obviously. And I believe the monster just turned up. I felt faintness seize me, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains. I perceived, as the shape came nearer, a slight, tremendous, but abhorred, that it was the wretch whom I had created. I trembled with rage and horror, resolving to await his approach, and then close with him in mortal combat. He approached. His countenance bespoke bitter anguish combined with disdain and malignity, while its unearthly ugliness rendered it almost too horrible for human eyes. But I scarcely observed this. Rage and hatred had first deprived me of utterance, and I discovered only to overwhelm him with words expressive of furious detestation and contempt. Well, New Lock, on the other hand, you were to wear a Dollar Tree witch costume. Do you wear a Dollar Tree witch costume? What? 1 minute. I cannot. Put on Briny's model with Sharingan eyes. This is not a Dollar Tree witch costume. How dare you? You are the worst. Void, I don't know if I want you as my minion. You are getting rather insulting, actually. I could probably try bribing her to get you to return on my birthday, though. Well, I don't know. I think she could be rather resistant to bribery. especially if there's something she does not want to do. No worries, Luke, you chill out. You have a nice time. Enjoy the lurk, enjoy the stream. Any way you want to watch the stream is valid. Devil! I exclaimed. You dare approach me! And do not fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked upon your miserable head. Begone, vile insect even! Or rather, stay, that I may trample you to dust, and oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims who have so diabolically murdered. I expected this reaction, said the demon. All men hate the wretched. How, then, must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissolute by the annihilation of one of us. Your purpose is to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you, and the rest of mankind. If you will comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will glut the maw of death, until it be stained with the blood of your remaining friends. I'll tell of her I think of it as paying a guy in a Spider-Man costume or clown costume for a birthday party. I'm not sure she'll fall for this. Abhorrent monster, fiend that thou art! Thy tortures of hell are too mild a vengeance for thy crimes. Wretched devil, you approach me with your creation. Come on, then, that I may extinguish the spark which I so negligently bestowed. My rage was without bounds. I sprang on him, impelled by all the feelings that which can arm one being against the existence of another. He easily eluded me, and said, Be calm! I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head. Have I not suffered enough, that you seek to increase my misery? Life, although it may be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. Remember, thou hast made me more powerful than thyself. My height is superior to thine, my joints more supple. But I will not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creature. I will be even mild and docile to my natural lord and king, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the which thou owest to me. O Frankenstein, be not equitable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice and even thy clemency and affection is most due. Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, who thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrecoverably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. Begone! I will not hear you. There can be no community between you and me. We are enemies. Begone, or let us try our strength in a fight, in which one of us must fall. How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favourable eye upon thy creature, whom implores thy goodness and compassion? Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent, My soul glowed with love and humanity. But I am not alone. But am I not alone? Miserably alone. You, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures, who owe me nothing? They spurn and hate me. The desert mountains and dreary glaciers are my refuge. I have wandered here many days. The caves of ice, which I only do not fear, are the dwelling to me, and the only one which doesn't, and only one man does not grudge. Sorry, just fidgeting a hot second. Daniel would like to be more comfortable. Well, not that I'm not already comfortable, but one must fidget, you know. I like this. We finally have a confrontation with the monster. I knew that it was the whole monster was something of a misnomer, and that the original monster was much softer spoken and more eloquent, so it's very fun to hear the tale of the original. They spurn and hate me. The desert mountains and dreary glaciers are my refuge. I have wandered here many days. The caves of ice, which I only do not fear, are a dwelling to me, and the only one which man does not grudge. These bleak skies I hail, for they are kinder to me than your fellow beings. If the multitude of mankind knew of my existence, they would do as you do, and arm themselves for my destruction. Shall I not hate them who abhor me? I will keep no terms with my enemies. I am miserable, and they share my wretchedness. Yet it is in your power and to recompense me, and deliver them from an evil which only remains for you to make so great, that not only you and your family, but thousands of others shall be swallowed up in the whirlwinds of its rage. Let your compassion be moved, and do not disdain me. Listen to my tale. When you have heard that, abandon or commiserate me, as you shall judge that I deserve, but hear me. The guilty are allowed, by human law, bloody as they are, to speak in their own defence before they are condemned. Listen to me, Frankenstein. You accuse me of murder, yet you would, with satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. Oh, praise the eternal justice of man! Yet I ask you not to spare me. Listen to me, and then, if you can, and if you will, destroy the work of your own hands. Why do you call to my remembrance? I rejoined, circumstances of which I shudder to reflect, that I have been the miserable origin and author. Cursed be the day, abhorrent devil, in which you first saw light. Cursed, though I curse myself, be the hands that formed you. You have made me wretched beyond expression. You have left me no power to consider whether I am just to you or not. Begone! Relieve me from the sight of your detested form. Thus I relieve thee, my Creator, he said, and placed his hated hands before my eyes, with which I flung from me with violence. Thus I take from thee a sight which you abhor. Still thou canst listen to me, and grant me thy compassion. By the virtues that I once possessed, I demand this of you. Hear my tale. It is long
and strange, and the temperature of this place is not fitting to your fine sensations. Come to the hut upon the mountain. The sun is yet high in the heavens, before it descend to hide itself behind your snowy prepuces, and illuminate another world. You will have heard my story, and can decide. On you it rests, whether I quit forever the neighbourhood of man, and lead a harmless life, or become a scourge to your fellow creatures, and the author of your own speedy ruin. As he said this, he led the way across the ice. I followed. My heart was full, and I did not answer him. As I proceeded, I weighed the various arguments that he used, and determined at least to listen to his tale. Hey, Newlog, do you have a diary? No, why would I keep a diary? Also, you have to remember, I don't normally have this physical form. That's kind of why I had to borrow hers. How could I write in a diary if I don't have a physical form most of the time? It makes no sense. As he said this, he led the way across the... Yes, I read that bit. I was partly urged by curiosity, and compassion confirmed my resolution. I had hitherto supposed him to be the murderer of my brother, and I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of his opinion. For the first time, also, I felt that the duties of a creator towards his creature were, and that I ought to render him happy, before I complained of his wickedness. These motives urged me to comply with his demand. We crossed the ice, therefore, and ascended the opposite rock. The air was cold, and the rain began to descend. We entered the hut, and the fiend, with an air of exultation, I with a heavy heart and depressed spirits. But I consented to listen, and seating myself by the fire which my odious companion had lit, he thus began his tale. In chapter 11. It is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. All the events of that period appear confused and indistinct. A strange multiplicity of sensations seized me, and I saw, felt, heard, and smelled at the same time. And it was, indeed, a long time before I learned to distinguish between the operations of my various senses. By degrees, I remember, a stronger light pressed upon my nerves, so I was obliged to shut my eyes. Darkness then came over me and troubled me, but hardly had I felt this when I opened my eyes. As I now suppose, the light poured in upon me again. I walked, and, I believe, descended, but I presently found a great alteration in my senses. Before, dark and opaque bodies had surrounded me, impervious to my touch or sight. But I now find that I could wander at liberty, with no obstacles which I could not either surmount or avoid. The light became more and more oppressive to me, and the heat wearying to me as I walked. I sought a place where I could receive shade. This was the forest near Ingolstadt, and here I lay by the side of a brook, resting from my fatigue, until I felt tormented by hunger and thirst. This roused me from my nearly dormant state, and I ate some berries which I found hanging on the trees or lying on the ground. I slaked my thirst at the brook, and then, laying down, was overcome by sleep. It was dark when I awoke. I felt cold also, and half frightened, as it were instinctively finding myself so desolate. Before I had quitted your apartment on a sensation of cold, I had covered myself with some clothes, but these were insufficient to secure me from the dews of night. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew and could distinguish nothing, but feeling pain invade me on all sides. I sat down and wept. Soon the gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I stared up and beheld a radiant form rise above the trees, the moon. I gazed with a kind of wonder. It moved slowly, but it enlightened my path, and I again went out in search of berries. I was still cold when under one of these trees I found a huge cloak, with which I covered myself and sat down upon the ground. No distinct ideas occupied my mind. All was confused. I felt light, and hunger, and thirst, and darkness. Innumerable sounds rang in my ears, and on all sides various scents saluted me. The only object that I could distinguish was the bright moon. I fixed my eyes on that with pleasure. Several changes of day and night passed, and the orb of night had greatly lessened. When I began to distinguish my sensations from each other, I gradually saw plainly the clear stream that supplied me with drink, and the trees that shaded me with their foliage. I was delighted when I first discovered that a pleasant sound, which often saluted my ears, proceeded from the throats of little winged animals, who had often intercepted the light from my eyes. I began to also observe, with greater accuracy, the forms that surrounded me, and to perceive the boundaries of the radiant roof of light which canopied me. Sometimes I tried to intimidate the pleasant song of the birds, but was unable. Sometimes I wished to express my sensations in my own mode, but the uncouth and inarticulate sounds which broke from me frightened me into silence again. The moon had disappeared from the night, and again, with a lessened form, showed itself while I still remained in the forest. My sensations by this time had become distinct, and my mind received every day additional ideas. My eyes became accustomed to the light, and perceived objects in their right forms. I distinguished the insect from the herb, and by degrees one herb from another. I found that the sparrow uttered none but harsh notes, while the blackbird and the thrush were sweet and enticing. One day, when I was oppressed by cold, I found a fire which had been left by some wandering beggars, and was overcome with delight at the warmth I experienced from it. In my joy I thrusted my hand into the live embers, but quickly drew it out again with a cry of pain. How strange, I thought, that the same cause should produce such an opposite effect. I examined the materials of the fire, and, to my joy, found it to be composed of wood. I quickly collected some branches, but they were wet and would not burn. I was pained at this, and sat watching the operation of the fire. The wet wood which I had placed near heat-dried, and itself became inflamed. I reflected on this, and by touching various branches I discovered the cause, and busied myself in collecting a great quantity of wood, that I might dry it and have a plentiful supply of fire. When the night came on and brought sleep with it, I was in the greatest fear lest my fire should be extinguished. I covered it carefully with dry wood and leaves and placed wet branches upon it, and then, spreading my cloak, I lay on the ground and sank into sleep. It was morning when I awoke, and my first care was to visit the fire. I uncovered it, and a gentle breeze quickly fanned it into the flame. I observed this also, and contrived a fan of branches, which roused the embers when they were nearly extinguished. When night came again, I found with pleasure that the fire gave light as well as heat, and that discovery of this element was useful for me in my food, for I found some offals that the travellers had left behind had been roasted, and tasted much more savoury than the berries I gathered from the trees. I tried, therefore, to dress my food in the same manner, placing it on the live embers. I found that the berries were spoiled by this operation, and the nuts and roots much improved. Food, however, became scarce. I often spent the whole day searching in vain for a few acorns to assuage the pangs of hunger. That's really not the word, but my brain won't process it right now. When I found this, I resolved to quit the place that I had hitherto inhabited, to seek one where the few wants I experienced would be more easily satisfied. In this emigration, I exceedingly lamented the loss of the fire which I had obtained through accident, and knew not how to reproduce it. I gave several hours to the serious consideration of this difficulty, but I was obliged to relinquish all attempt to supply it, and wrapping myself up in my cloak, I struck across the woods towards the setting sun. I passed 3 days in the rambles, and at length discovered the open country. A great fall of snow had taken place the night before, and the fields were one uniform white. The appearance was disconsolate, and I found my feet chilled by the cold, damp substance that covered the ground. It was about 7 in the I didn't stub my toe on my desk. No, I didn't. What are you on about? I would never do such a thing, and that's very stupid. Why did I do that? It's fine. Everything's fine. Stupid human fleshy bodies. Why must they feel pain so? It is such a flaw. It was about 7 in the morning, and I longed to obtain food and shelter. At length I perceived a small hut on a rising ground, which had doubtless been built for convenience of some shepherd. This was a new sight to me, and I examined the structure with great curiosity. Finding the door open, I entered. An old man sat in it, near the fire, over which he was preparing his breakfast. He turned upon hearing the noise, and perceiving me, shrieked loudly. Quitting the hut, ran across the field with speed of which his dilapidated form hardly appeared capable. His appearance different from any I had ever seen before, and his flight somewhat surprised me, but I was enchanted by the appearance of the hut. Here the snow and rain could not penetrate. The ground was dry, and it presented me then as an exquisite and divine retreat, as pandemonium appeared to the demons of hell after their sufferings in the lake of fire. I greedily devoured the remnants of the shepherd's breakfast, which consisted of bread, cheese, milk, and wine. The latter, however, I did not like. Then, overcome by fatigue, I lay among the straw and fell asleep. At noon, when I awoke, and allured by the warmth of the sun, which shone brightly on the white ground, I determined to recommence my travels, and disposing of the remnants of the peasant's breakfast in a wallet I found, I proceeded across the fields for several hours, until at sunset I arrived at a village. However miraculous did this appear, the huts, the neater cottages, and stately houses engaged my admiration by turns. The vegetables in the garden, the milk and the cheese that I saw placed in the windows of some of the cottages allured my appetite. One of the best of these I entered, but I hardly placed my foot within the door before the children shrieked and one of the women fainted. The whole village was roused. Some fled, some attacked me until grievously bruised by stones and many kinds of missile weapons. I escaped to the open country and fearfully took refuge in a low hovel, quite bare and making a wretched appearance after the palaces I had beheld in the village. This hovel, however, joined a cottage of a neat and pleasant appearance, but after my late dearly brought experience, I dared not enter it. My place of refuge was constructed of wood, but so low that I could with difficulty sit upright. No wood, however, was placed on the earth which formed the floor, but it was dry, and although the wind entered by immutable chinks, I found it an agreeable asylum from the snow and the rain. Here, then, I retreated and lay down, happy to have found a shelter, however miserable, from the inclemency of the season, and still more from the barbarity of man. As soon as morning dawned, I crept from my kennel. I might view the adjacent cottage, and discover if I could remain in the habitation I had found. It was situated against the back of the cottage, and surrounded on the sides which were exposed by a pigsty and a clear pool of water. One part was open, and by that I crept in, but now I had covered every crevice by which I might be perceived with stones and wood. Yet in such a manner I might move them on occasion to pass out. All the light I enjoyed came through the sty. That was sufficient to me. Having thus arranged my dwelling, and carpeted it with a clean straw, I retired, for I saw the figure of a man in a distance. I remembered too well my treatment the night before I trust myself to his power. I had first, however, provided for my sustenance for that day by a loaf of coarse bread, which I purloined, and a cup with which I could drink more conveniently than from my hand of pure water which flowed by my retreat. The floor was a little raised, so that was kept perfectly dry, and by its vicinity to the chimney, the cottage was tolerably warm. Being thus provided, I resolved to reside in this hovel until something should occur which might alter my determination. It was indeed a paradise compared to the bleak forest in my former residence. The rain dropping branches and dark earth, I ate my breakfast with pleasure, and was about to remove a plank to procure myself a little water, when I heard a step, and looking through the small clink, I beheld a young creature, with a pail in her hand, with a pail on her head even, not her hand, passing before my hovel. The girl was young and of gentle demeanour, unlike what I have since found cottagers and farmhouse servants to be. Yet she was meanly dressed, a coarse blue petticoat and a linen jacket being her only garb. Her fair hair was plaited but not adorned, She looked patient yet sad. I lost sight of her. In about a quarter of an hour, she returned bearing the pail, which was now partly filled with milk. As she walked along, seemingly incommoded by the burden, a young man met her, whose countenance expressed a deeper despondence. Uttering a few words with an air of melancholy, he took the pail from her head and bore it to the cottage himself. She followed, and they disappeared. Presently I saw the young man again, with some tools in his hands, cross the field behind the cottage. The girl, who was also busied, sometimes in the house and sometimes in the yard. On examining my dwelling, I found that one of the windows of the cottage had formerly occupied a part of it, but the panes had been filled up with wood. In one of these was a small and almost imperceptible chink, through which an eye could just penetrate. Through this crevice, a small room was visible, whitewashed and clean, but very bare of furniture. In one corner, near a small fire, sat an old man, leaning his head on his hands, in a disconsoled attitude, maybe, I don't know. He's sad, that's what I'm getting. The young girl was occupied in arranging the cottage, but presently she took something out of a drawer which employed her hands. Yes, kind of cozy but bare, that's definitely what I'm getting. And she sat down beside the old man, who, taking up an instrument, began to play, and to produce sounds sweeter than the voice of the thrush or the nightingale. It was a lovely sight, even to me, poor wretch who had never beheld aught beautiful before. The silver hair and benevolent countenance of the aged cottager won my reverence, while the gentle manners of the girl enticed my love. He played a sweet, mournful air, which perceived to draw tears from the eyes of this amicable companion, of which the old man took notice until she sobbed audibly. He then pronounced a few sounds, and the fair creature, leaving her work, knelt at his feet. He raised her, and smiled with such kindness and affection, that I felt some sensations of peculiar and overpowering nature. They were a mixture of pain and pleasure, such as I had never experienced before, either from hunger or cold, warmth or food, and I withdrew from the window, unable to bear these emotions. Soon after this, the young man returned, bearing on his shoulders a load of wood. The girl met him at the door and helped him relieve his burden, and taking some of the fuel into the cottage, placed it on the fire. Then she and the youth went apart and took a nook of the cottage. He showed her a large loaf and a piece of cheese. She seemed pleased and went to the garden for some root and plants, which she placed in water, then upon the fire. She afterwards continued her work, whilst the young man went into the garden and appeared busily employed in digging and pulling up roots. After he had been employed thus about an hour, the young woman joined him, and they entered the cottage together. The old man had, in the meantime, been pensive, but on the appearance of his companions he assumed a more cheerful air, and they sat down to eat. The meal was quickly dispatched. The young woman was again occupied in arranging the cottage. The old man walked before the cottage in the sun for a few minutes, leaning on the arm of the youth. Nothing could exceed in the beauty the contrast between these two excellent creatures. One was old, with silver hairs, and countenance beaming of benevolence of love. The younger was slight and graceful, in his figure, and his features were moulded with the finest symmetry, yet his eyes and attitude expressed utmost sadness and despondency. The old man returned to the cottage, and the youth, with no tools different from those he had last used in the morning, directed his steps across the fields. Night quickly shut in, but to my extreme wonder, I found the cottage had means of prolonging light by the use of tapers, and was delighted to find that the setting of the sun did not put an end to the pleasure I experienced watching my human neighbours. In the evening the young girl and her companion were employed in various occupations which I did not understand, and the old man took up the instrument and produced the divine sounds that had enchanted me in the morning. So soon as he finished, the youth began, not to play, but to utter sounds that were monotonous, and neither resembling harmony of the old man's instrument, nor songs of the birds. And since I found that he read aloud, but that time I knew nothing of the science of words or letters. The family, after having been thus occupied for a short time, extinguished their lights, and retired, as I conjectured, to rest. That's very impressive. If he had no idea how to actually speak at that point, to get to this level of eloquency in such a short amount of time, he's a very impressive monster, don't you think? Excuse me while I drink. Oh, it's a bit of a lazy Sunday feeling, is it not? I ate a lot today, and all I want to do is nap. But we shall continue reading, because this is very nice. It's very interesting to see the monster's point of view and what has happened. Obviously, we have spent a lot of time with Victor, and all his time has been just worrying. You thought Frankenstein was supposed to be Ooga Booga? Well, you were entirely incorrect. He is actually a rather tragic character, you see. He was brought into this world, and his creator hated him completely. So much so, he gained PTSD from the situation, and then wanted to kill him on their first confrontation. Frankenstein is not a scary book. It is a book that questions the nature of man. And really, what is scarier than that? I lay on my straw, but I could not sleep. I thought of the occurrence of the day. What chiefly struck was the gentle manners of these people, and I longed to join them, but I dare not. I remembered too well the treatment I had suffered the night before from the barbarous villagers. I resolved, whatever course of conduct I might hereafter think it right to pursue, that for the present I would remain quietly in my hovel, watching and endeavouring to discover the motives which influenced their actions. The cottagers arose the next morning before the sun. The young woman arranged the cottage and prepared the food, and the youth departed after the first meal. This day was passed in the same routine as that which preceded it. The young man was constantly employed out of doors, the girl in various laborious occupations with him. The old man, who I soon perceived to be blind, employed his leisure hours on his instrument or in contemplation. Nothing could exceed the love and respect which the younger cottagers exhibited towards their venerable companion. They performed towards him every little office of affection and duty with gentleness, and he rewarded them by his benevolent smiles. They were not entirely happy. The young man and his companion often went apart and appeared to weep. I saw no cause for their unhappiness, but I was deeply affected by it. If such lovely creatures were miserable, it was less strange that I, an imperfect and solitary being, should be wretched. Yet why were these gentle beings unhappy? They possessed a delightful house, for such was my eyes, and every luxury they had. Mouse, next page, please. There we go. A fire to warm them when the chill and delicious Vinland. Fire to warm them when chilled, and delicious Vinlands when hungry. They were dressed in excellent clothes, and still more, they enjoyed one another's company and speech, interchangeably each day looks of affection and kindness. What did their tears imply? Did they really express pain? I was at first unable to solve these questions, but perpetual attention and time explained to me many appearances which were first enigmatic. A considerable period elapsed before I discovered one of the causes of the unease of the amiable family. It was poverty, and they suffered that evil in a very distressing degree. Their nourishment consisted entirely of vegetables from their garden and milk of the one cow which gave very little during the winter, when its masters could scarcely produce food to support it. They often, I believe, suffered from the pangs of hunger very poignantly, especially the two younger cottagers. For several times they placed food before the old man, when they reserved none for themselves. This trait of kindness moved me sensibly. I had been accustomed during the night to steal part of their store for my own consumption, but when I found that in doing this I inflicted pain on the cottagers, I abstained and satisfied myself with berries, nuts, and roots which I gathered from the neighbouring woods. I discovered also other means through which I was enabled to assist their labours. I found that the youth spent a great part of each day in collecting wood for the family fire, and during the night I often took his tools, the use of which I quickly discovered, and brought home some firing sufficient for the consumption of several days. I remembered the first time I did this. The young woman, when she opened the door in the morning, appeared greatly astonished upon seeing a great pile of wood outside. She uttered some words in a loud voice, and the youth joined her, who also expressed surprise. I observed with pleasure that he did not go to the forest that day, but spent it in repairing the cottage and cultivating the garden. "Welcome, Trevor, welcome!" By degrees I made a discovery of a still greater moment. I found that these people possessed a method of communicating their experience and feelings to one another by articulating sounds. I perceived that the words they spoke sometimes produced pleasure or pain, smiles or sadness, in the minds of countenances of the healers. Victor is very much clouded by his ambitions, its pursuit. I can, in a vague sense, see where it comes from, as a product of the culture of that time, where folks felt as masters of nature of the world. Yes, very much so. In a sort of era of discovery, where so many things are getting revealed so quickly. I suppose it's very similar to the giant wave of technology, when we went from dial-up to broadband very quickly, and SNESes to Xbox in only a few years. Makes people feel smarter, but really we've gotten dumber. I love that contract compared by the view of the person made by Victor, and their view outside of those trappings. I don't know. It's just you. No, it's not just you. The monster has a very innocent point of view. because he is innocent. He never asked to be made, and he has not, at least at this point, done anything wrong. He hadn't got to the potential murder, or what actually happened with William yet. So we don't know if he was actually responsible for that yet, but he's entirely innocent at this point. Oh, the youth's name is Felix. Wonderful. I do love that name. I perceived the words spoke pain and sadness in the minds of countenances of the hearers. This was indeed a godlike science, but I ardently desired to become more acquainted with it. But I was baffled in every attempt I made for this purpose. Their pronunciation was quick, and the words they uttered not having any apparent connection with visible objects. I was unable to discover any clue by which I could unravel the mystery of their reference. Ambition, imagine having so much ambition that you sound unrealistic past me. I'ma donate so much that Bryony gets a lifetime supply of tea. I'm sure she would be very happy with that. I know it happens after Mary Shelley's death, but the story makes me think of Alfred Nobel and the invention of dynamite. A new breakthrough of technology, and the consequences of it, good and bad. Ah, yes, I think that is a very good words. Comparison, yes. I think that's kind of the beauty of Mary Shelley's work. There is likely some invention, maybe, that inspired her to actually write this in the first place. Because we humans do have a habit of repeating ourselves often, and doing things because we think it's a good idea. Yes, revengeance. We are reading Frankenstein. Indeed. We are hearing about Frankenstein's attempt to learn language. By great application, however, after having remained during the space of several revolutions of the moon in my hovel, I discovered the names that were given to some of the most familiar objects of discourse. I learned and applied the words fire, milk, bread, and wood. I also learned the names of the cottagers themselves. The youth... Oh, hello! Thank you very much for the subscription, Revengeance. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. The youth and his companion had each of the several names, but the old man only had one, which was father. The girl was called sister or Agatha, and the youth was called Felix, brother or son. I cannot describe the delight I felt when I learned the ideas appropriated to each of these sounds, and was able to pronounce them. I distinguished several other words, which, being able as yet to understand or apply them, such as good, dearest, unhappy. I spent the winter in this manner. The gentle manners and beauty of the cottagers greatly endeared me to them. Oh, I do need to drink. I really do need to drink more often during these streams. When they were unhappy, I felt depressed. When they rejoiced, I sympathized in their joys. Wait a minute! He's just watching a reality TV show! Before they were even invented! I saw few human beings besides them, and if any other happened to enter the cottage, their harsh manners and rude gait only enhanced me to the superior accomplishments of my friends. The old man, I could perceive, often endeavoured to encourage his children, as sometimes I found that he called them to cast off their melancholy. He would talk in a cheerful accent, with an expression of goodness that bestowed pleasure. We need a hydration check members emoji when you get monetized. I will write that down so I don't forget it exists. But that would probably be good, yes. Hydration check emoji. Well, Luke, who I believe is still lurking, has a hydration check redeem on his Twitch channel. So I might copy that as well when I get redeems sorted. It's very wise. He would talk in a cheerful accent, with an expression of goodness that bestowed pleasure even upon me. Agatha listened with respect in her eyes, sometimes filled with tears which she endeavoured to wipe away unperceived. But I generally found that her countenance and tone were more cheerful after having listened to the exhortations of her father. Oh yeah, how many hours left? I think it's about 100 now. However, you do have to keep in mind, actually it's technically less than 100 now, I think. However, you do need to keep in mind that even after I hit this, which I probably will by the end of next week, that YouTube may take a couple of weeks to actually, register that I have hit 3,000 watch hours, and a little bit longer to, actually process my application to get monetized. But it will probably be in the next few weeks, I imagine. I will keep you posted as much as I can. And also there's the case of by the time I get access to the monetized areas, it might take me a little while to actually set everything up. So please be patient on that side. I will obviously get everything ready as soon as possible. Yes, the Amnesia video has a lot of views, and it has done very well for my watch hours, but we can only words. I am brain, are you okay? Can you process language right now? I don't know. It's not responding. Beep, beep, beep. Brainy's thoughts. 404. Brainy's thoughts not found. New Log's thoughts not found. But yes, the Amnesia video does have 80-ish views. But you have to remember that YouTube registers a view at only watching 30 seconds. So even if you have 80 views, and most of them are, say, 30 seconds, the average view of that Amnesia video, let me show you, is about 10 minutes, which is actually very high for a lot of my views, actually, so it's quite impressive. So that 80 is about 10 minutes-ish. So that would be maybe 100 hours on its own. Which is probably why I'm less than 100 away, to be honest. It has shot me up. But you also have to remember that YouTube is slow on counting these hours. Slow as heck. So you must be patient. We will get there. Don't you worry about it. You've all worked so hard. And and your hard work will pay off, and we will get over the threshold. But for now, we are going to read more books, because apparently I just can't word right now. Apparently, I just cannot. We also don't have much time in the stream, so we should try find the end of this chapter. 1 second. So I'm going to... I could mention... Let's get to the end of the... You can do a 24-hour Nulag compilation. I don't think I have enough streams for that. I don't think I generally have enough content. Although, that is an idea. Just putting up a very, very long video that is just a compilation of streams actually might be a good idea. Just editing together stuff. I will consider this idea. Very long stream compilation. Blah. Very long stream compilations. But But yes, I've been working hard on the videos and everything to help boost it up, because as much as the shorts are doing very well, the shorts do not count towards my watch hours, which is unfortunate, especially considering that cute one has absolutely exploded. And is one of the reasons my sub count has gotten so high. But anyway, if you'd want to do a special at some point where I just take you through my statistics, that would be funny, but let's not. I could also... No. Listen to exaggerations. It was not thus with Felix. He was always saddened by the group, and even to my unpractised senses, he appeared to have suffered more deeply than his friends. But if his countenance was more sorrowful, his voice was more cheerful than that of his sister, especially when he addressed the old man. I'm just going to skip a few pages ahead to see how many I need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's not too terrible. We can do this. We can get to the end of this chapter. I could mention innumerable instances which, although slight, marked the disposition of these amiable cottages. In the midst of poverty and want, Felix carried with pleasure to his sister the first little white flower that peeped out from beneath the snowy ground. Early in the morning, before she had risen, he cleared away the snow that obstructed her path to the milk-house. Oh, what a good brother! Drew water from the well, and brought the wood from the outhouse, where, to his perpetual astonishment, he found his store always replenished by an invisible hand. In the day, I believe, he worked sometimes for a neighbouring farmer, because he often went forth and did not return until dinner. I think you do have enough, as new luck, to get 24-hour compilation done. Also, if you do get monetized, donating does boost you in the algorithm. I don't know if donating boosts me in the algorithm. That is something I will have to research. I'm not sure how being monetized or not, or whether having members or anything, and how that changes the algorithm. I really don't know. It's something I will have to consider. In the day, yes, that evening, before dinner, yet brought no wood with him. At other times he worked in the garden, but as there was little to do in the frosty season, he read to the old man and Agatha. So I can just come back to New Luck VOD and continuously super comment. That's not how it works. I don't think the old, I don't think the VODs will give you the ability to super comment. I believe that you will get the chance to maybe tip. I believe there is a tipping thing you can do on old videos or things like that. But I will let you know when I have that bit of YouTube out and accessed for me. At the moment, I honestly have no idea. Which is why, even when I do get access to the monetization, it may take a little while before I have it all set up, because honestly I have no idea what I could do with it. It's very vague on what I can do. That it says, oh, you can do this, and this, but when I actually get into it, and into the nitty-gritty of setting it up, you know, I am very curious as to where it can go, and what I can do with it. And I will have to let you know. I think they're called super thanks, but you know, yes, that's the one. I ardently long to comprehend these. No. This reading had puzzled me extremely at first, but by degrees I discovered that he uttered many of the same sounds when he read as when he talked. I conjectured, therefore, that he found on the paper signs for speech, which he understood, and ardently longed to comprehend these also. But how was that possible, when I did not understand the sounds for which they stood as signs? I improved, however, sensibly in this science, but not sufficiently to follow up any kind of conversation. although I applied my whole mind to the endeavour, for I easily perceived that, although I eagerly longed to discover myself to the cottages, I ought not to make the attempt until I had first become a master of their language, which knowledge might enable me to make them overlook the deformity of my figure, for which this also the contrast perpetually presented to my eyes, and made me acquainted. Another Vtuber lady told me the more I super chat, the more it boosts them in the algorithm. It doesn't matter how much I donate, just that how many times I donate. So I wanted to try that on old videos. Well, that's fair, that's interesting. As I said, I will endeavour to do some research on it, so I can be prepared when the time comes. But if another VTuber is an authority and knows this too, then I would be inclined to agree until I have done my own research. I had admired the perfect forms of my cottagers, their grace, beauty, and delicate complexions, but how was I terrified when I viewed myself in a transparent pool. At first I stared back, unable to believe that it was indeed I who was reflected in the mirror, and when I became fully convinced that I was in reality the monster that I am, I was filled with the bitterest sensations of despondence. The mortification, alas, I did not yet entirely know the fatal effects of this miserable deformity. As the sun became warmer and the light of day longer, the snow vanished, and I beheld the bare trees and the blank earth. From this time Felix was more employed, and the heart-moving indications of impending famine disappeared. Their food, as I afterwards found, was coarse, but it was wholesome, and they procured a sufficiency of it. Several new kinds of plants sprang up in the garden, which they dressed, and the signs of comfort increased daily as the season advanced. The old man, leaning on his son, walked each day at noon, when it did not rain, as I found it was called when the heavens poured forth its water. This frequently took place, but a high wind quickly dried the earth, and the season became far more pleasant. Alright guys, it's 5 minutes to the end. I'ma shill Bryony's stuff. Bryony is selling New Luck. I told you I did not have a diary. What a liar. New Luck's diary from over 1,000 years ago. Quickly guys, I promise all the embarrassing stuff. I have no embarrassing things in the first place. I am perfect. There is nothing embarrassing to be found out about me, obviously. My mode of life in my hovel was uniform. During the morning I attended the motions of the cottagers, and when they dispersed in various occupations I slept. The remainder of the day was spent in observing my friends. When they had retired to rest, if there was any moon, or the night was starlit, when I went into the woods and collected my own food and fuel for the cottage. When I returned, as often as it was necessary, I cleared their path from the snow and performed those offices that I had seen done by Felix. I afterwards found that these labours, performed by an invisible hand, greatly astonished them, and once or twice I heard them on these occasions utter words, good, spirit, wonderful. But I did not understand the significance of these terms. My thoughts now became more active, and I longed to discover the motives and feelings of these lovely creatures. I was inquisitive to know why Felix appeared so miserable, and Angela so sad. I thought, foolish wretch, that it might be in my power to restore happiness to these deserving people. When I slept, or was absent, The forms of the venerable blind father, and the gentle Agatha, and the excellent Felix flitted before me. I looked upon them as superior beings, who would be the arbiters of my future destiny. I formed in my imagination 1,000 pictures of presenting myself to them and their reception of me. I imagined that they would be disgusted, until my gentle demeanour and conciliating words, I should first win their favour, and afterwards their love. These thoughts exhilarated me, and led me to apply with fresh ardour the acquiring art of language. My organs were indeed harsh but supple, and although my voice was very unlike the soft music of their tones, yet I pronounced such words I understood with tolerable ease. It was the ass and the lapdog, yet surely the gentle ass, whose intentions were affectionate, although his manner were rude, deserved better treatment than the blows and execration. The pleasant showers and genial warmth of spring greatly altered the aspect of the earth. Men who before this change seemed to have been hidden in caves dispersed themselves and were employed in various arts and cultivation. The birds sang in more cheerful notes, and the leaves began to bud forth on the trees. Happy, happy earth, fit habitation for gods, which so short a time before was bleak, damp, and unwholesome. My spirits were elevated by the enchanting appearance of nature. The past was blotted from my memory, the present was tranquil, and the future gilded by bright rays of hope and anticipation of joy. Which I have a feeling next week will be utterly destroyed! Because, of course, if everything went well with his meeting of the cottagers, then he wouldn't be up on a mountain talking to Victor, would he? Let it all burn down. It'll be great! But that will be next week's problem. We're only just getting to halfway through this book, you know. I know, Boris, you want him to be happy, but there's no happiness to be found for such an inhuman and against nature creature. It'll be glorious. It'll be so glorious. But okay, that'll be it for this stream. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thank you everyone in the chat. Thank you to everyone who lurks, and thank you to everyone who watches the VOD. Thank you to the people at the start who helped me test the unsuccessful redeems. I will attempt to get them sorted again. Maybe not for Monday, because Monday is the stupid block game. And I will have enough to sort of sort out with the assistants and everything for that stream. But I may try it again on Tuesday during the Ruinous stream. Next week's schedule will be pretty much back to normal after the block stream and the specials and Halloween and everything. I haven't quite decided it, but obviously Monday will be Minecraft. No, Monday will not be Bioshock. Minecraft returns to its usual spot now that I have been taken away. But I will be playing some Bioshock next week. That is for sure. It just won't be the Monday. It would likely either be the Friday or the Thursday, but I'm not sure which right now. You will have a schedule on Monday. As per usual, pretty early, there will be a schedule. So keep an eye on the community tab or the Discord, or both. Why not both? Why not both? If you would like to support me in any kind of way, I have a Kofi, I have a Patreon, where you can read my extra writing, or just send me money for funsies. Up to you. I also have there is also merch if you would like to get worldly things for your money. None of them have my Witch Briny beautiful face on, but they do have her face on. You get a notebook and a pillow and a t-shirt, and there are some bookmarks and all sorts of wonderful things on there, I suppose. Also, there's discounts for books and many others. Just go into my description right now and click every single link in there. That's your homework. Click all the links and preferably buy something. That would also be wonderful. I would highly appreciate it. Yes! I will be back tomorrow with some Minecraft. Well, no, I won't be. She will, because I hate Minecraft. It's a stupid block game. It's so stupid. But no, she brought it back because her assistants wanted me. Can I request a let's tease? No! Why would I let you do that? I don't want to be teased. That sounds stupid. What's stupid for? You keep asking for the weirdest things. Why would I ever agree to that? Gross. But anyway, in fact, it is sleepy time for this body. And I would like to say again, thank you so much everyone for coming. Thank you to the new subs that came in during this stream as well. I know one of them popped up, but there was two, and I saw you. I saw the number, even if the pop-up doesn't always pop up, because YouTube can be a little bit stupid. But I see you, and I appreciate you, just so you know. New Lug dresses up as a clown stream? No! Most definitely not! It's... Void. Void. Why must you think I am a clown? Why? Tease me? Dress me up as a clown? Die. Just die!